Have two expert speakers with us. So first of all, we have Andy Hogston, who will be talking about LED lighting, and we also have David A. Bosch, who will be talking about sustainable computing. And then I will follow up with a brief presentation just on the non-financial support and grant funding that's available through the Decarbonisation Net Zero programme. So without further ado, I will pass you over to Andy from Smart Systems UK.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Andy Hogston from Smart Systems UK. We're a lighting manufacturer based in Coventry. Next, please. We've established in year 2000, and effectively we're going for 24 years, all in the lighting industry, up until just recently, where we've also entered into the solar industry. We're a small team of 25 people, and we get involved in, as you can see from this slide, commercial industrial applications. We do specialize in bespoke upgrades, so it's all about recycling, upscaling up your original fittings, for example, so you're not throwing everything away in this sort of carbon conscious environment that we now live in. Reuse as much as we can, but we also get involved in emergency lighting and also controls for compliance, and also energy saving measures or improved energy saving measures. And solar PV, battery systems, etc., which we started in 2022, which is going quite successfully. But I want to focus on the lighting market because up to 40% of most or small businesses' electricity bills can be attributed to lighting or inefficient lighting. And if you haven't upgraded to LED, then now is the time to do so, or make sure you've got plans to do so. The recent bans that have come in from Europe and now adopted by the UK have come into effect as of February this year. So manufacturers can no longer place new fluorescent lamps, tubes, bulbs stock on the UK market. So once the existing stocks have run down and gone, you have very limited options as to what you can do about moving forwards. But ultimately, the impact on this fluorescent lamp ban is costs are going to start to go up. Next, please. We can see here the types of lamps that are typically used throughout most businesses, in luminaires in the ceilings, walls, wall lights, factories, offices, schools, and ultimately, once the stock's gone, the stock is gone. And yes, there are multiple solutions out there, some more cost effective than others, and most of it is LED, and it's all developed to try and drive costs down, energy consumption down, but also make your lighting more efficient. Next, please. Control gear of existing fluorescents has been phased out for a number of years, 3 years now, so it's getting harder to maintain products. We find customers, supply chain, in the supply chain, the prices are starting to go up, which helps with the return on investment from investing in LED, for example, to save on costs and on money, but also long-term carbon footprint savings as well. Just to give you a classic example of what we're talking about. So a standard 5-foot fluorescent light fitting will consume a 58 watt tube is what's typically installed, consumes about 65 watts. And with the losses, you're running a normal business 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. Effectively, that all calculates for one lamp is going to cost you about £57 a year based on 34p a kilowatt hour, which at this moment in time is a reasonable price for electricity that we're seeing in the marketplace. That's £57 for one lamp. Multiply that across the number of lamps that you have within your organization, and all of a sudden that bill can start to seriously mount up. Next, please. With any LED lighting, pretty much your minimum level of saving is 50% on the power consumption, but with controls and the right technology, we are seeing 75% plus savings on energy for lighting. Now this has it requires a lot of attention to detail to actually arrive at the right solution for your environment, but it's well worth putting in the time and the trouble to make sure you've got the right solution for the project. We see numerous installations where people have just gone to the local wholesaler, bought whatever they have on the shelf, stuck it in the ceiling, and either it overlights the space, so it's not a comfortable environment to work in, or it's using too much energy that's required, and therefore you're not getting the savings that you could really achieve. Moving forward, LED products have a longer life expectancy, and also the maintenance of the products will be less involved and less required in the future, so saving on those costs as well. What now? Basically, we offer free of charge site surveys to come out and assess your existing buildings, look at your current lighting and whether you have controls or not. We'll create an audit with a return on investment calculation of what you could be saving if you upgraded and changed, and obviously you then start saving money from day one. Okay. Yeah, just one important thing, that if you are a landlord or a tenant, EPC ratings are changing, and the regulations are striving to get better ratings for buildings that are being rented out, leased out. And to achieve those EPC ratings for landlords, it's getting much harder. So what we are starting to see is, historically, the tenant was always responsible for upgrading the lighting at their cost, at their expense, at their time, their trouble. But now more and more landlords are being more sympathetic and working in partnerships with the tenants to actually improve the lighting, because in turn it helps improve the EPC rating for that landlord to rent out the building in the future, lease out the building in the future. That's it, I think.
Brilliant, thank you, Andy. And yeah, certainly on our energy audits, we're still seeing lots of businesses with fluorescent lighting, and it's a really good opportunity to save on energy costs going forward. So yeah, just I think there's at least one question in the chat, but if anyone else has any questions, please go ahead. And we've got some time at the end of the presentations just to go through questions. So yeah, thank you, Andy. And next we have David Abosh, who will be talking about sustainable computing.
Great, thank you. I've got two logos. So Cognition Cloud is a business that advises organizations on how to deliver and embed circular and sustainable business model innovations, and we also provide an IT sustainability service. Recognition Circular is a CIC not-for-profit, and we provide digitally excluded and other people with specific training on how to repair and refurbish computers and mobile devices. So we help to get people into work or further education, and at the same time working to tackle the e-waste problem. So today I'm going to talk briefly about the impact of information and communication technology on the environment and give you some tips on how to reduce it. So I think it's important to put the problem into context. So if we look at some countries, so we can stop there actually. All right, you're doing all my animations at once, Maria, thank you. So yeah, if we look at the emissions profile of a few countries, we can see UK and Italy are less than 1%. Germany is a bit more of a manufacturing powerhouse, closer to 2%. IT emissions depends on how you measure them. So this report here puts them at 1.8%, which is just a bit below Germany. So if you go ahead with the next animation or the next click, the world in data puts IT emissions closer to 3%. But a recent study from Lancaster University suggested we've actually been underreporting emissions, and they're closer to 4%. If you just click again, Maria. So that, if we compare that to other sectors, the shipping sector is 1.7% and aviation less than 2%. So if you've got a company policy where you're limiting, say, flying on business travel, but you're not looking at your IT, then you're possibly missing an opportunity. So I guess the question is, where are all these IT emissions coming from? If you were looking at recent headlines, you'd be lent to thinking that perhaps this is from all the energy that big data centers from the likes of Amazon and Google are using, and you'd be at least partially right, because this does use huge amounts of energy, and the amount of energy is growing all the time. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. If you click to the next one, please, Maria. Typically, data center emissions from electricity are less than 10%, and 90% of emissions are other indirect emissions. So this is emissions embodied in the manufacture of data center equipment and embodied in the construction of the data center itself. So yeah, lots of energy, lots of electricity, but that's only part of the picture. Next. And if we look at our end user devices, that kind of ratio of where the emissions are is very much the same. So using our devices accounts for about 10% of their emissions, and the other 90% are embodied emissions. Next. And actually, end user devices account for more emissions than data centers or network equipment. Next. And the reason for this is really just the sheer scale of production and consumption of these devices. So the average lifespan of a laptop, we've gone a bit too far there. So the average lifespan of a laptop is usually between 3 and 5 years, and most users replace their phones every 2 or 3 years. And this drives a constant demand for new devices, which is why we've got such high production figures. Next. And which is also why we've got such a massive mountain of e-waste. In the UK alone, we throw away something like 36 million devices a year. So it's a huge amount of waste. Next. So yeah, the fact is we live on a planet of finite resources, and this kind of consumption isn't sustainable. Next. And so so basically what we have here is quite a crossover in the resources that go into computers and mobile devices, and the resources that we need to drive the energy transition and the transition to electric vehicles. So these types of resources are going to grow in demand quite a lot over the next decade or so. And as a result, as demand grows and actually resource availability shrinks, the cost of these resources is going to go up. And this is going to feed into the cost of the devices that we buy. So these kind of rapid replacement cycles are not only bad for the environment, they're going to become increasingly costly as well. Next. Okay, so what can you do about it? Next. So if you remember that your physical IT assets have the biggest impact on carbon footprint, What you can do is change your procurement strategy to buy refurbished and remanufactured devices, and you'll pay for about half the price for equivalent computing power. So here's an example. You can just click through this if you want. So here's a typical business laptop. It will cost you around about £1,000 and will come with about 1/3 of a ton of CO2e. You can get an equivalent or near equivalent refurbished device with almost the same performance for about half the price and a fraction of the carbon footprint. So one thing you can do is to not buy new devices. Next. The other thing is you can use your computers for longer. So the most sustainable computers are the ones that you already have. So if you double the life of your existing computers, you'll cut your emissions from them in half. And skipping a replacement cycle can also save you lots and lots of money. Also, if you're providing a laptop or a mobile phone to your employees and they also have their own devices for personal use, then effectively you've got twice the number of devices that you actually need. And even though it might not be on your sustainability report, it's twice the carbon footprint. Next. Okay, so yeah, there's still quite a lot of organizations who are running Windows 10 that goes out of support next year. Most businesses will be able to upgrade to Windows 11. You can click on and there are specific hardware requirements for Windows 11. A lot of machines out there will meet it, but globally there are some 450 to 500 million computers, if you click again, that don't meet this standard and potentially become obsolete. So there are some alternative options to this. If you click the next slide. So probably not enough time to go all through all of these, but basically there are some really good options to help use your existing devices probably for twice as long as you use them today. Next. So in terms of takeaways, I guess you could summarize it by saying for saving money on lighting, upgrade your lighting with LEDs. But for computers, do the opposite. Don't upgrade your computers, use the same one. So think about resources, because new devices mean new resources. New resource extraction is responsible for half of all global greenhouse gas emissions and 80% of biodiversity loss. 80 to 90% of IT emissions are embodied in physical hardware, even if that hardware is in the cloud somewhere. End user devices have more impact than data center or cloud, just because there's more of them. And yeah, the most sustainable devices are the ones you already have. So for maximum impact, yeah, focus your impact on your end user devices. Don't buy new ones if you can buy refurbished or remanufactured. Consider bring your own device, so you're not having user-owned devices and company-owned devices. And use your existing devices for longer, so keep them repaired, keep them maintained. And yeah, Windows is probably not the best option, and I can talk about that for a really long time, but we haven't got it at the moment. So lastly, yeah, I'm here to help, so please get in touch if you want to know more.
Brilliant, thank you, David. No, it's really interesting, and yeah, some scary figures on the carbon impact of computing and e-waste, etc. So yeah, it's really good to go over that. So yeah, now I'll just give a brief overview of the decarbonisation net zero programme. So I'm Sarah Ballinger, one of the business energy advisors working on the programme. So we are a UK government funded programme that offers non-financial and financial support to businesses in the West Midlands Combined Authority area. And there's also support available to Warwickshire businesses as well that is accessible. So yeah, what do we aim to achieve with the programme? We are looking to decarbonisation operations from businesses in West Midlands, so reducing energy usage, waste, etc., resource usage. And this is to align with the UK government's legally binding UK net zero targets for 2050 or sooner. So yeah, what can an SME, small to medium enterprise, kind of expect if they sign up to the programme? So first of all, we'd ask you some registration details, so you can register via the website, and we'll just gather some details on things like your energy use and just check you're eligible as well. Following this, we do have a triage form. So at this point, some businesses may be triaged to a higher energy intensive audit if they use a lot of energy. The majority will go to kind of like a standard energy assessment, but this is the point where we'd ask how much energy you use each year and kind of guide you down the right path, I suppose. So following this, you will be assigned a business energy advisor who will be able to carry out a free energy assessment at your site. So we need a bit of information, such as 12 months worth of energy bills for this, potentially things like site plans, and we'll book in a site visit, have a walk around, look at your lighting, heating, different processes. And then following that, you would get a recommendations report that outlines recommendations to save energy. Alongside this, we would put things like the payback period on investment, how much carbon you'll be saving, estimate of how much energy and like the cost savings associated with that as well. And we do have grant funding available as well. So all businesses wanting grant funding have to have an energy assessment prior to this. But there's funding available, a 50% intervention rate. So the business would pay for measures and then they can get reimbursed with a 50%. And there are grants available from £1,000 up to £100,000. Just some other resources available through the Decarbonisation Net Zero programme. So we have the Green Business Network. I think that there's a link for it in the chat and a QR code as well. Just a place where if you're struggling to get quotes and you want funding, there's just a list of suppliers that you can approach. Next slide, please. Yeah, we have Green Business podcasts. So we've got a wide range of podcasts on different subjects. So energy, solar, even things like biodiversity. So yeah, encourage you to check out all the past episodes, and there's a link to subscribe as well. So yeah, this is how you can subscribe and get learn more about the programme and register. So yeah, there's a couple of links there, QR code, and yeah, just follow up after the presentation today. Okay, thank you very much for joining. So we have got a few minutes for questions at the end. So Andy and David, if you want to come back onto the screen if possible. So I can see there have been a few questions. Hi there. Yep, did you want to go ahead?
Yeah, there's a couple of points in the chat about what we do with old lamps, etc., fittings. So what we try to do is we try to retain as much of it as possible in the actual ceiling. So if it doesn't have to come out, don't take it out. If it's just the light source that we need to change, then we'll design a new gear tray to change the light source. But the tubes, the fluorescent tubes, lamps that come out, they all get recycled. But also we work with an organisation called Rico Light, which is like our partner for the lighting industry, and that has a much better program for working with us and other lighting manufacturers to actually recycle as much as possible of the old technology that is removed when upgrades do take place, whether it's the ballast, the metal body fittings, the diffusers, the plastic, etc. And they have a very, very high rate of recycling as a percentage of what's removed. But a lot of the time, we're looking at fittings that are 10, 20, 30 years old. And it's been in the ceiling for that long. If it's in good condition, reasonable condition, then we look to change the light source and leave the actual bulk of the material in the ceiling. And then it'll be there for another 10, 20 years.
Brilliant, thank you. Just to touch on lighting controls just very quickly as well. So you mentioned that in the presentation, but I think most people are familiar with like motion sensors, but what else, what other opportunities are there around lighting controls?
Yeah, so lighting controls is very, very useful where you have old buildings where there's no control in place whatsoever. So a lot of the market is now moving towards wireless controls. Then you don't have to rewire, which can be really expensive, but you can use simple sensors and software to program your lights, set up groups, and have your lighting operating automatically. And we've seen significant changes in power consumption by just implementing the smallest of controls, which could just be having a smart driver on your light fitting. So when the actual lights get installed, you can configure the lights to the light level that you want for your environment. A lot of the time we see installations where the lights get changed point for point. There's too many lights, the density of light is too high, and ultimately when they all get turned on, everybody complains it's too bright. Well, you can avoid that simply by having a smart driver on the back of that luminaire, and that luminaire can be what you choose, what your preferred design style, etc. But then just configure it with a light meter to the right light level for your office, for your canteen, for your classroom, and then everybody's happy with it. But significantly, by just being able to configure it, you're immediately reducing the power consumption and the demand. And we've seen a light fitting of 30 watts go into a building, and it's actually running at 16, 17 watts in reality once you've configured it to the right light level for that space. So there's massive savings to be had just by having a small amount of controls.
Yeah, that's brilliant, thank you. And I suppose that highlights, I suppose if you're getting quotes in, you know, asking suppliers to do a lighting design and kind of give you that information at that point, would you say that's quite important?
Yeah, so a lot of customers will just ask for a point for point, simple, like for like change, which is fine, but that's the most cost effective from a capital perspective, but it's not the most cost effective in terms of running costs. So you have to look at the whole picture. What are we going to be spending for the next 10 years on our lighting and our electricity to power our lighting? We have a school not too far from the city centre, and ultimately they now have all smart lighting. They never considered having it previously, but just being able to change the configuration of the lights in the rooms, how the lights function, what control the teachers have in terms of dimming the lights, turning the lights off at a whim, the lights automatically dimming and turning off when there's nobody there. it has such an impact on the amount of power that gets used.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, yeah, just really important to get it right from the outset, isn't it?
Yeah.
There are a few questions around lighting, but I did have a quick question to David, if possible, just on so you mentioned the kind of carbon impact of purchasing IT equipment. So if a business wanted to measure that, like their scope 3 emissions, have you got any advice on how they could do that?
Yeah, so for end user devices, so laptops, desktops, that sort of thing, manufacturers publish a data sheet with life cycle analysis on it for usually for each of the devices they manufacture. So that will break down your scope 3 and also give you a kind of energy rating, which you can use to multiply against the grid emissions factor that the UK government publishes. So you can get your scope 2 and scope 3 emissions fairly easily from for your IT equipment.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, we're seeing more businesses that we're speaking to in certain sectors. You know, they've done all their scope 1 and 2 emissions, so all their energy use, fleet, all that kind of thing, and now they're being asked for scope 3 emissions as well. So I think, yeah. And do you expect that over time, like more and more businesses are going to be asked about this information? Is that something you're seeing?
Increasingly, yeah. And again, you know, if it depends on the type of business, but if you're not, you know, if you're not running fleet, if you're not manufacturing, if you're a service business, particularly if you've got a lot of home workers, then you know your emissions from IT are probably your biggest source of carbon footprint. So it's worth tackling.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm just gonna have a look at the chat just on. I think a fair few of these questions have been answered, haven't they? So yeah, just a link to the Green Business Directory. There are some installers on there. Andy, do you have, I suppose, any advice on if you are going out getting quotes from different suppliers, like are there any particular accreditations or for the actual lighting as well? Like, is there particular lighting that you would recommend over others or things you should ask about?
It's hard to make recommendations on others, but all I would say is if you are looking at upgrading your lighting, talk to a lighting company, because a lot of the time, if it's an electrical contractor, they get involved in lots of different activities and lots of different fields, but they don't necessarily specialize in lighting. If you speak to a local lighting company who's been around for a long time, like Smart Systems, for example, we know what we're doing. We've been doing it for 24 years. We've been very successful. We're a family-run company. We're honest, upfront. If we can do it, we'll give you a solution, but we'll make the right recommendations from our experience. But you have to think about the bigger picture. Look at the long term, not the short term. A lot of companies, a lot of organizations look at the short term. What budget have I got? Squeeze as many lights into that budget as possible, go and install them in my ceiling. And wherever I go, I look at lighting. And I've been to 3 sites today. I'm sat in the customer's office at the moment, and we're just repairing we just repaired some high bays in his workshop from another manufacturer that have failed, they're out of warranty, and but as he's a tenant, he has to maintain the lights in his workshop. And to go and buy a brand new one of the one that's already in there would probably cost him somewhere like £350. We've repaired it, upgraded it with LED technology, returned it to him for 90 quid. And that is just fixing an LED fitting that has stopped working. So we offer that service as well. But yeah, just don't rush it. take your time, get the different people to look at your building, to give you different suggestions, and you'll soon get a feel for who is really interested in doing your upgrade and who just wants your business. We really want to do people's upgrades for the right reasons, to save energy, give them a nicer environment to work in, and give them a sustainable solution that's going to last for years. We don't want to just come in, take your order, upgrade your lights, walk away and say thank you very much, which unfortunately a lot of people do.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, that's really good advice. Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to finish now. I think there's one just very quick question from Stephen Alexander, just asking how many quotes you'd need to obtain for the grant. It does differ depending on the local authority area you're in slightly. So yeah, we will send information following the presentation. And yeah, if you want to get in touch to ask any further questions, please feel free. So yeah, I think we'll wrap up there. So thank you, David and Andy, for presenting today, and thank you everybody for joining. And yeah, just get in touch if you want to register on the programme or if you've got any questions, and we will be in touch with the presentation and recording after today. So yeah, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.